Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Steve Hull, Chief Information Officer at Leidos. Steve, how are you?
Great, John. Great to be here.
You know, you walk down the street, you pick up a newspaper at the 7-Eleven, the first thing you see is this Equifax thing. It's just beating you over the head. So from your perspective of being a Chief Information Officer at a big company like yours, what do you think of all this Equifax, all these claims and counterclaims? Hard to understand, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. Certainly as a part of a big corporation, we worry about our customers' data, the people in our businesses' data. But, when you think about Equifax, 143 million people had their data that got exposed, right? So you worry about how are you protecting that data, and then how are we helping our customers protect their data as well?
Yeah, and they have 820 million other records out there. There's a lot more people are vulnerable now, aren't they?
Sure. And this isn't the only one, right? So this is the newest one, but we've also had the OPM breach. We've had Yahoo. We have many of these types of breaches out there. And the key question is, how do you protect that data from this happening again in the future?
Well, when you read some of the interviews of the people at Equifax, I think the word that applies to their description is murky. It's like, well, did that tree fall down? Well, something happened in the backyard. They're not giving details, are they?
Yeah, sure. And we think about that a lot. So one of the key things when you're in a company that hosts this kind of data is, what's the playbook? If something were to happen, because let's face it, things happen all the time. Nobody's bulletproof. So things may happen in the future. You have to be ready. You have to have those communications thought out ahead of time. And you have to know these are the things that we can say and can't see. Legal, communications, all the key players have to be right there on board and ready to go.
Well, let me talk about the 500-pound elephant in the room right next to you there. Equifax is a critical partner with the federal government, IRS, Social Security, Medicaid. There could be irreparable damage done, huh?
Yeah, sure. Well, and what we're seeing now is truly a lack of trust, right? The people are losing their trust in the ability to have their data protected. So it becomes very difficult, especially for companies that deal with information. The federal government obviously has the most of the information on how do you get that trust back.
So from your corporate perspective, you have to guard your company, and also you work with federal agencies to help guard them as well. So you've got both things to worry about, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, the number one IT provider, we're in many different agencies. And so protecting their data and all the contracts that we have, as well as protecting our internal employees' data, is kind of number one for us as a business. Absolutely.
Well, let's look in the mirror here. It may shock you. Look in the mirror. And so, how do you go about, what's best practices for your company, just writ large?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things is, there's standards. So NIST has a standard, 800-171. We'll probably talk about that more today, but they're raising the sea level on the regulations out there. So we certainly meet all of those, but it's not good enough, right? Just meeting compliance isn't enough. So we really have to have people protecting our data, protecting our networks. We're a big target, right? So banks, defense contractors, and the government, all very big targets. So it's not just good enough to be compliant. We have to have processes in place. We have to audit ourselves all the time. We have to have some of the best hunters, some of the best people that really understand the trade craft to protect our networks. And then we train them, and then they train all the people that protect our customers' networks.
I was raised in a neighborhood where they had people who were shade tree mechanics. They'd work on mechanic in the backyard, Sure. Sometimes those are mechanics during the week. So you may be learning lessons at your company and applying those to federal agencies as well. So you're the shade tree mechanic applying that during the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the best things that we do. So now we're under attack. We learn from those attacks. We keep campaign metrics on who's attacking us, when they're attacking us, and what are the types of capabilities that they're using to attack us. And then we use that, right? We take that data and we say, let's go apply what we've learned to all the contracts we have. And that's the best way that we can protect our customer.
One of my neighbors is a guy named Dave Linthicum. Turns out he's written 11 books on information technology. And he's just recently quoted in the Wall Street Journal about cybersecurity. And the title of the article is great. It's an unexpected security problem in the cloud. And what he talks about is misconfigured software and services. Isn't this basic blocking and tackling?
Yeah, you would think so, right? And everybody thinks that the cloud will save you and make everything easy, but it turns out that it's really not that easy. So going into the cloud, you have to have a really good plan for how you're going to secure yourself. It's really easy to spin up new servers, new data places, but it's really hard then to protect them all. So you have to have somebody that's really smart about doing this, that's done it before, or you're going to get yourself in trouble.
And it seems obvious that, in today's cloud world, if you have a web browser and a credit card, you can fire up a system somewhere and off you go.
That's absolutely
you don't
right.
have to tell Steve, no, hey.
As CIO, that's one of my big challenges is you hear the horror stories of people going down to Starbucks and spinning up something because they need to get work done and they don't have time for security. And so it really becomes something that we have to drive into policy. We have to make it, put some teeth into it to make sure that people are doing the right things, because you're right. It's too easy these days.
Yeah. In the healthcare world, this big world is interoperability. And I see what happens. I see in hospitals are connected to different devices, and all of a sudden, a device from a manufacturer is attacked. It affects the hospital. In your situation, you can see all kinds of different devices, and just difficult to find out who's connected to where.
Yeah. So visibility is one of the main things that we look at when we're talking about security, is making sure that we have visibility across all of our endpoints. And just as you just described, that's gotten much harder. The mobile devices, all the different devices that are out there, makes that threat surface so much bigger. And so trying to understand that. And one of the key things that we have is a big company is suppliers. So those suppliers are into our systems. They need access to be able to provide us the services they provide. So now we're worried about how are they protecting themselves as well.
Here's a fancy organization, the National Cybersecurity Institute. Got a quote here. Every employee at every level plays a role in the cybersecurity of an organization. Even the guy down at the Starbucks with a credit card firing up. He's part of the problem or part of the solution, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he has to be. We look at those folks as key defenders these days. Everybody has to be knowledgeable. They have to understand what their priorities are in terms of protecting data, and we have to educate them. We spend a lot of time now on education of those end users, because they are the front line now in the defense of the company.
Training is more important than I think 5 or 10 years ago, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Because now that email address is a primary threat vector. So if you have an email address, you have a way into the company.
My guests today are Steve Hull, Chief Information Officer at Leidos. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, on the discussion, Securing Government Against Tomorrow's Threats. Sponsored by Leidos and Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.